Welcome to my Sorare NBA journey. In the last episode, I was looking at exactly how well I've done, how I'm positioned in my club, and to cut a long story short, essentially I'd done very well in basketball considering I had no knowledge of basketball. I'd almost doubled my ETH value of my gallery in about a month's time. We're looking back now, I'd say it's about 2 months on since I've started, and yeah, things are changing quite drastically, so let's get into it. So you can see on screen now my rare players. And you're probably wondering where they are, because I used to have 10 players, I used to have 10 plus players in the rare division, and yeah, I always wanted to achieve higher and higher scarcities, because the more you move up the scarcities, I feel like it's generally better for you. There's obviously different strategies where, it might work better to have lower tier cards, but general rule of thumb is the more you can move up these scarcities, the more scarce they are, the better control you can have of the division, and I think that's kind of the strategy I wanted to employ with NBA, and it went well for me, definitely went well for me. So why have I sold everyone? Essentially, I wanted to take a little bit of time out of NBA. Essentially, now that now that the World Cup is over, football's going to go back to full flow again. I'm going to be having 6-7 teams in my Sorare football teams, and they take up a lot of time. Looking up that DNP research, did not play, essentially who's going to get injured, who's expected to rotate. All of that is very time consuming. So I thought my most expensive cards from NBA have to be sold. I'm not giving up NBA completely. I just wanted to have less reliance in terms of my time, in terms of my commitment, because, I could lock up a win now and just, kind of free roll the rest of my gameplay, just having fun with it, seeing how I'm doing. Because even in the short amount we've had this sort of gap now, I can notice in the last month, I'm winning a lot less. I think a lot more better players are out there, or maybe the same players are getting better at the game, because I'm starting to realize I am struggling. But there is big news that comes with this. Because if you look at the recent tournament that's just been released, right, it's called Deck the Halls, and limited cards are allowed, rares, super rares, unique. So any cards on the platform, you get an MVP and 120 points cap. And I was like, okay, that seems quite reasonable. And then you pop into the prizes here. First place gets a super rare tier 3, and tier 3s aren't like football if you're watching a football one. Tier 3s aren't the worst, they're like kind of middle tier. So super rare, then there's 10 super rares on offer, then there's like tier 2 rares, and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, that's a really good reward pool, up to 1,500 users. Essentially what they're doing, it's like a little marketing campaign, it's a little thank you, it's a little Christmas gift that says, Sorare players, this one's on us. It's a very beneficial division. I was like, well, I've got to take, reality of this, I've got to take emphasis on this, because what I was actually trying to do is take less time out of the basketball and then sell off my prized assets. So by selling off my prized assets, I'm going to have an ETH balance, and that ETH balance is going to go into football so I can be more competitive on the football side. And then I check Deck the Halls, and then I'm like, should I just have one crack at it? If you can win a super rare, right, with limited cards, that's 2 scarcities above. So yeah, we've gone for it, essentially. I'm just going to cut a long story short. I was in the lineup builder, and I was just looking at cards I want, and I was like, who am I going to get? I genuinely have no knowledge of basketball still. I know players I like, and I know players that, have gone on the journey, have done very well for me, that I always want to keep in my club for that kind of like nostalgic feeling. I appreciate it's not very long, but still that kind of feeling of this guy's got my back. He's won me big rewards. Even if it's not the exact same card, I think it's nice to have the names, the Klay Thompsons, the Mo Bambas, the Dyson Daniels, those sort of people I definitely want to keep in touch with. But we've gone big, because if you could do the maths in your head, you'd realize that I'd probably have about 0.7, 0.8, and yes, I've bought some football players. So what happened to the rest of it? Let me show you this. If I include the limited players, Luca Doncic has been picked up for £300. Looking at it, I kind of got carried away. Let me explain how the lineup builder was going. I was looking at the lineup builder and I was like, okay, who's got the best projections? I'll just buy a few of these if they've not rocketed in price, because, one good game week out of them, you can get your money back in one term. And even without that, this is so rare. You have the card's player life for, the rest of the player's life, essentially. So a small time punt is absolutely fine. Top projection, I could pick up for like £15. I was like, fantastic. I'll just put that in the basket, buy now. Don't care on auctions. I don't typically like to wait. I'm very close to the end of the game week. I'm about 24 hours before the game week closes. So now's a good time just to buy now. If you wait for auctions, you end up, I'd say 9 times out of 10, paying more if you wait for an auction as we get closer to the deadline. But what happened is I picked up 2 or 3 of these players with massive projections for no, not really a pump in price. And I'm trying to put them into the lineup builder and they're just not showing up with these massive projections. And then I realised I'm looking at the current game week projections. I was just like, you're such an idiot. So then I was on a little bit of tilt and I was looking at Luca and I was like, he's expected to score the best this game week. So do we have a proper crack at it? Do we spend £300 on the Deck the Halls lobby or the Deck the Halls game mode and hope for the best? Short answer, yes. I mean, you can see on screen. I always wanted Luca. I always wanted Jason Tatum, Luca, and maybe Giannis. I always wanted Jason because he was kind of the first player I knew. He plays for the Boston Celtics. I support Celtic football. It correlated, I'm sure you know. Luca Doncic is a weird one. I came into this whole Sorare, into the NFT world, into this kind of collectible world through physical collectibles, you know, sports cards, Pokemon cards, things like that. And Gary Vee's like a big name in that space. Not that I'm a massive fan of him, but you know, he does have influence, and you know, I've watched a few videos, and this video kept coming up on like my timeline of this. It doesn't matter what you're doing, just buy Luca, just buy Luca, just buy Luca. And it's all you would ever hear from him is just buy Luca. And this must have been 3-4 years ago when he was up and coming. He must have obviously spotted the talent, and I have no idea how young he spotted him. He could have spotted him when he was absolutely popping off in basketball for all I know. But it's like a running joke between me and my girlfriend. Just occasionally we'll just go to each other, just buy Luca, just buy Luca. You know, it's that kind of mentality where, you know, it gives you a good feeling. And I was like, yes, he's an expensive player. Yes, he's the most expensive player on the game, right, for his scarcity. But if he's got the best for this game week, if he's got a good nostalgia for him, and he's 23 at the end of the day, he's going to have absolute years of utility. So even if I just sit on him. So I thought, we've gone for him. We're hoping for the best. So let me explain how the lineup build is going. Currently, I have not finished it at all. I'm just working through it. I had a nice benefit. I had a start of Jason Tatum, who's going to take up a lot of points, but he's also projected +3 on his average. And in general, Jason Tatum's been doing really well for me. You know, sometimes he puts up massive scores, which outscore his projections by loads as well. So happy to play him. Derek White, you know, I've had this guy for absolutely ages. He plays in green. His name's White, green and white. You can probably work it out. +12 projection was fantastic. And then, you know, the highest projection in terms of, in terms of the highest expected score over their points cap it takes to get in, there was this Frank Tilkanina. I absolutely butcher names on the channel, but that was who it was. So I was like, pick up him. And then this Jalen Brunson. And essentially, I finished my team and I had Dwight Powell, I think, plays for the Mavs as well. And I was just like, okay, well, we'll just play this team. And I ended up like 40, 50 points short. So then I went out and got the best player in Doncic. And, you know, I've just explained why I wanted him, as well as, you know, what's he got here? +6 projections, pretty big when you're at the high end. And I'm using him in tournaments to go. I have felt that I've missed out on, you know, 2 monsters because Tatum can drop into my contender and all the rest of it. But essentially, I'm still 16 points short. And in a game week game mode like this, sorry, you really want to be maxing it out. So I'm thinking, if I get rid of Frank there, I'll have 23 points left, and I can get 23 points with someone that has a massive projection. Yes, I'm going to have to spend more ETH, unfortunately, but like I said, there's a lot of upside in that Deck of the Halls. I do think it's a bit of a Christmas present to Sorare users, and I've just got to hope no one gets injured in the meantime. So 23 points we've got to go out and get, right? And you guys have wanted to see this little content for a while, so it might not be fun, but people have asked for it. Now I get 23 points, and I can filter by my projections, make sure you're in the right game week, because I've made that mistake, right? And then if I've got 23 points to use, I can just use the slider. And honestly, like I said, it is not a case of me being smarter than the system. I am the system at this point, and it looks like this Thomas Bryant guy is the best to fit in. But he is bringing 19 points to the table. So if I can find someone that can outscore him for a different price, because obviously he's got this massive pump in price, I don't ignore these. I appreciate he's probably a bench player that's coming in for 1 or 2 games and is going to score well. So, you know, when you're looking at 3x, take in mind of whatever you do win that game week, you're going to have to take the 3x price difference. In this case, it's about £20, because he'll probably return back to what he normally is. So not someone I typically like to buy on that end. Is there anyone here? Okay, this guy, I like the look of this Fultz because he's only 22 points. That would leave me with 1 point remaining, which is great. In terms of like, has he pumped in price? It's been a little bit slower. You know, if we look at him from 19 to 29, I feel that's slightly better than the other guy, and his scores generally look a bit better. So this is the type of player I'd look to get in favour of the one I just showed you before. Honestly, no knowledge here. We are just using the numbers to our benefit. So to finish the team for £25 extra, when we just spent 300 on Luca Doncic, I don't think it's going to be too much of a hit. So let's go out and get Markelle Fultz. So as you can see, there's a lot finishing on auction, but they don't finish for about 16 hours. Even if I buy this card now, people are going to look at that last sale and believe that's kind of the new market value. That's kind of how people treat Sorare cards. If there's a sale at that value, and it's kind of the same for all NFTs and digital collectibles, if there's a sale at that value, that's now the new price, right? Last sale is last sale. So essentially I'm just going to go out and get it. Is it optimal? I would actually think this is. In terms of the timing, obviously it's not optimal, right? So I appreciate that, you know, I should be doing this well in advance. In fact, sometimes it'd be better to do it after the games because I expect there's games tonight on Thursday evening. So just to finish off the lineup builder then, I have not done this perfectly at all because I should have checked my gallery if there was any 23 pointers. We've got Benedict Mahurin here who's expected +1. So I could put him in. He's got 1 game. Also, this Fault, surprisingly, also only has 1 game. Obviously, you typically want 2 games in basketball. 3 games could be better, but people have told me that's actually a lot more rotation in 3 games. So 2 games is the optimal, right? But I've already gone out and bought him. I am going fully optimal into this 1 game week for, you know, the last time ever. I'll leave 1 point in the capped mode additional. One thing we could do with this team after completing the game week, and we'll see how it goes. I don't have a complete plan for this, but it's to sell the whole team except for Tatum because we've had Jason Tatum for ages, but sell the rest of the team, including Luca, and then just see how much we would have gained or lost if you add the reward in. Now, the key to this is that I do need all my players to play. I can't have anyone get injured, and that's the kind of risk. You know, you can't be doing this every game week. I'm doing it as a one-off and just seeing how it goes, essentially. I think I'm going to lock in this team as the Deck the Halls team. So now I'm going to have another lineup that I need to build, right? And I'm going to have a couple of players left, which are going to be very helpful. So I can add Frank in, I can add Dwight in, and this is how I typically do it. I look if there's any points remaining. So this is a very high projected team, but it leaves far too many points on the board. We've still got 45. So I think the problem we're going to run into here is that, one thing that I've been absolutely dealing with, which I haven't mentioned on this journey yet, is I've had an absolutely injury crisis. You know, you can see all the bottom at the bottom here. I've had Sexton, Karl Anthony Towns, the big cat as they call him, and Tyrese Maxey all injured for absolutely ages now. But on top of that, I've had so many other people injured. I think Mahurin was injured. I think Powell was injured for a bit. Cam Reddish was definitely injured. John Collins was maybe injured as well. And then I had all my rare players, like Mo Bamba took an injury hit. I just think I've been absolutely flooded with bad luck recently on the NBA side. So it is difficult, right? Because I've just had all of this go so well for me in terms of rewards. But I do want to show the other side where it's like, I haven't won much recently in this last month. It's took up a lot of time. I've got an injury crisis going on. You know, a couple of my players fell in value because they are injured. I want that to be completely upfront, but at the same time, I'm still net positive. In fact, let me show you the graph right now. Strictly looking at my basketball manager stats here, and you can see this purple line is my kind of net deposits, and my net deposit is coming up to 0. If we put it into pounds, I always feel it's a lot more realistic, but of course there is ETH fluctuation. So this is the most realistic that I think. If you deal in ETH, which a couple of people still do, that's fine, but for me, this is the most realistic. So what that says is I've put in £209 if you take the kind of net, what I've put in minus what I've taken out, and then on top of that, my estimated gallery value is 574. So I'm very close to free rolling. I could free roll if I sold Luca, for example, but I like where I'm at right now in NBA. You know, a very small exposure of £500 when you compare it to my main team and in football, or my whole gallery, let's say, which is about £10,000, which is just absolutely nuts. I appreciate that, right? But I've not done too badly, so I can have a little bit of fun on the NBA side and try and be really precise with how I'm putting my teams in and in specific game weeks, because now I don't have that pressure of, you know, having a bigger gallery. I can find game weeks where I can sacrifice a team for a little bit of upside in terms of, you know, the whole gallery. Something that's quite hard to explain, that when you have a big gallery, whether this be in basketball or football, it's very hard to sell players, because if you are selling your best players when they're on a price rise, you're going to take out most likely your best team for that week. But now that I've sold off a lot of my gallery in basketball, if a player spikes in price that, you know, I don't have a connection to, I can just get rid of him, because although I'm losing a team, I'm going to be much less competitive anyway. I'm expecting to win less. So that should be quite fun. The lineup builder, then I've made one change, but I am looking like I'm not going to be competitive at this level because I've gone all in on Deck the Halls. So a few of these players I might try and sell then if I'm not using them. Like Mahurin's got a +1. Powell was gifted to me, so it'd be probably quite rude to sell him. Dyson Daniels is a long-term holder. One of the subscribers dropped a comment below on why I should get him, and I think he is absolutely right. So we could sell John Collins and Nikita. Because this is my journey, I only update you when I find it's important. So I have no idea when the next video will be. Hopefully next week, because I've won Deck the Halls. But until then, please like this if you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel, whether you're here for football or whether you're here for NBA. And yeah, all the best to you. Cheers. Merry Christmas.